Today we're talking about pecan crop load management. And it's kind of a strange thing to think about, actually removing some of our pecans, but it actually will benefit your tree tremendously if they're overloaded. Now you may remember last year was a great year for pecans, and almost everyone, their pecan trees were just loaded. And many people don't have very much this year. That's probably because their trees were too busy trying to fill all those pecans, and they're not trying to produce buds for next year's crop. So in the orchard at the research station, at the Cimarron Valley Research Station, we maintain a block of Pawnee trees in Kansas and Merrimack. And so in the first week of August is normally the time that we do our crop load management. In a commercial orchard, they would use a trunk shaker like they would use for harvesting the pecans, shaking the trees. But you can also do some crop load thinning in your yard. We can use a Frailing Pole just to remove some of those nuts. Why would we want to take off any pecans? Most people want as many as they can get. It actually is going to help our tree produce better quality pecans and better sized pecans. You think about each one of these nuts requires 8 to 10 leaves to fill out properly. When we have a tree that's completely loaded with pecans, then there's not enough leaves to provide the photosynthesis to make the carbohydrates to fill those nuts. And so we will benefit this tree by removing part of that crop. We also help the tree out by they go into the winter with less potential for freeze injury. They're stressed because they're trying to fill out all these pecans, and so if we can have them in a happy state going into the winter, then they're going to be much better off. We can also have some issues with shuck decline and some other ripening issues if we have too many pecans on the tree as well. The main benefit though is that reduces the alternate bearing, where we have one year a huge crop and nothing the next year. And so that's why we recommend, if you've got a tree that you can reach with maybe a Frailing Pole and get out there and remove some of those nuts when the pecans are in the water stage. And that means when you cut them open, they're filled with liquid endosperm. They haven't started actually making the kernel material, but it's the process right before it goes into that dough stage, and that's when we we lose the benefit of thinning after that dough stage. So we want to thin them when they're in the water stage. And so I'm going to grab a pole over here and I'll show you just how we might look about doing this. Now I'm not the best at using a Frailing Pole. They're awfully long and difficult to maneuver, but if you look up in this tree, you might see that almost every one of our terminal shoots has a cluster. And it doesn't matter if there's one nut or if there's 7 nuts in that cluster, it's still counted as a cluster on a shoot. So we want to have about 50% of those shoots with clusters on these large fruited pecans. Now if they're smaller, you can leave more on the tree. It's not as hard to fill out properly. But I'm going to just see if we can knock off a few with my Frailing Pole. So after you've got your crop load to about 50% of the terminal branches with pecans, then you can stop. And so those nuts on the ground can be raked up and tossed in the trash. They're just mainly water, so they'll dry up. But for more information on crop load thinning, we have a fact sheet you can find at the Oklahoma Pecan management webpage. It's okpecans.okstate.edu, or you can go to factsheets.okstate.edu and search for pecan crop management.
We hope you enjoyed this video. It's part of our Oklahoma Gardening YouTube channel. You can also find even more videos on our OK Gardening Classics YouTube channel. And join us on social media for great gardening tips, photos, and discussion.